My master was much quieter. He spent most of his time in one corner of the great hall, talking to Van Lowershoek. Though his eyes often followed Catherine around the room as she moved among guests, he wore a smart black velvet jacket and his paternity cap, and looked comfortable, though not much interested in the party. Large crowds did not appeal to him as they did his wife. Late in the evening, Van Rugen managed to corner me in the hallway. As I was passing along, it was a lighted candle and a wine jug.
Ah, the wide-eyed maid.
He cried.
Hello, my girl.
He grabbed my chin in his hand, his other hand pulling the candle up to light my face. I did not like the way he looked at me.
You should paint her,
he said over his shoulder. My master was there. He was frowning. He looked as if he wanted to say something to the patron, but could not. Get me some more wine. Peter, the father, had popped out from the crucifixion room and was holding a cup towards me. Yes, sir. I pulled my chin from Van Duven's grasp and quickly crossed to Peter, the father. I could feel 2 pairs of eyes on my back. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. The jug's empty. I'll just get some more from the kitchen. I hurried away, holding the jug close so they would not discover that it was full. When I returned a few minutes later, only Peter the father remained, leaning against the wall. Thank you, I said in a low voice as I filled his glass. He winked at me. He raised his glass in a mock toast and drank. After the feast, winter descended on us, and the house became cold and flat. Besides a great deal of cleaning up, there was no longer something to look forward to. The girls, even Eladius, became difficult, demanding attention, rarely helping. Maria Finns spent longer.
Right.
After the feast, winter descended on us, and the house became cold and flat. Besides a great deal of cleaning up, there was no longer something to look forward to. The girls, even Elidius, became difficult, demanding attention, rarely helping. Maria Finn spent longer in her own rooms upstairs than she had before. Francescus, who had remained quiet all the way through the feast, suffered from wind and began to cry almost constantly. He made a piercing sound that could be heard throughout the house, in the courtyard, in the studio, in the cellar. Given her nature, Katharina was surprisingly patient with the baby, but snapped at everyone else, even her husband. I had managed to put Agnes from my mind while preparing for the feast, but memories of her returned even more strongly than before. Now that I had time to think, I thought too much. I was like a dog licking its wounds, to clean them, but making them worse. Worst of all, he was angry with me. Since the night Van Rejuven cornered me, perhaps ever since Pieter the son smiled at me, he had become more distant. I seemed also to cross paths with him more often than before. Although he went out a great deal, in part to escape Francesca's crying, I always seemed to be coming in the front door as he was leaving, or coming down the stairs as he was going up, or sweeping the crucifixion room when he was looking for Maria. When he was looking for Maria Thins there, One day, on an errand for Katharina, I even met him in Market Square. Each time he nodded politely, then stepped aside to let me pass without looking at me. I had offended him, but I did not know how. The studio had become cold and flat as well. Before, it had felt busy and full of purpose. It was where paintings were being made. Now, though I quickly swept away any dust that settled, it was simply an empty house waiting for nothing but dust. I did not want it to be a sad place. I wanted to take refuge there, as I had before. One morning, Maria Thins came to open the door for me and found it already unlocked. We peered into the semi-darkness. He was asleep at the table, his head on his arms, his back to the door. Maria Thins backed out. Must have come up here because of the baby's cries, she muttered. I tried to look again, but she was blocking the way. She shut the door softly. You can clean up later. The next morning in the studio, I opened all the shutters and looked around the room for something I could do, something I could touch that would not offend him, something I could move that he would not notice. Everything was in its place, the table, the chairs, the desk covered with books and papers, the cupboard with the brushes and knife carefully arranged on top, the easel propped against the wall, the clean palettes next to it. The objects he had painted were packed away in the storeroom or back in use of the house. One of the bells of the new church. I went to the window to look out. By the time the bell had finished its sixth stroke, I knew what I would do. I got some water heated up on the fire, some soap and clean rags, and brought them back to the studio, where I began cleaning the windows. I had to stand on the table to reach the top panes.